Hi, this is Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about an interesting question. Should nuns play clerics in Dungeons and Dragons? Let me define my terms. Nun, None, the fastest bracket of spiritual categorization, right? Religious categorization in the United States of America. By the way, everything I'm going to talk about right now is American specific, okay? So if you're a nun, if you have no religion, which is the fastest growing category of religion, none, right, which is you are not religious, right? And by the way, we're struggling in the churches because people are leaving the churches and becoming nuns. N-O, not N-U-Ns, N-O-N-Es, right? And if you read any real news source, you know what the term nuns is. But I did want to define it. All right, so if you're a nun, right, should you play a cleric? All right, we're going to ask this question. I'm going to answer this question today. I'm going to give you my humble opinion on the answer to this question. Okay. First, I want to talk about how we arrived to this question. Right. So first of all, I'm going to declare it now. I have a new D&D sage. Right. So I care about Dungeons and Dragons at a level very few people care about anything. Right? I really am like. D&D is my fourth most important thing. God, my entire life is defined by Christian husband, father, in that order, right? Like I owe the most, and my duty is to God first. My duty is to my wife second, and my duty is to my children first. After that, D&D, like flat out, right? Now I will say, like my professionalism is actually connected to my religion, right? Like I'm a provider for my family, and that's commanded of me in the Bible. So you could count my professionalism with my husband role, which is a provider role, right? But like D&D is quite literally the fourth most important thing in my life, right? And so, boy, I tell you right now, you get somebody talking about D&D, they don't know much more than me, right? Like frankly, that's just my opinion. I think I can count on one hand the people who have talked to me about Dungeons and Dragons and never taught me anything, right? Like I just am so in it, and I do so much reading, and I just don't learn from a lot of people, right? But I got a new D&D sage. His name is Tejas Abadia. The dude is on point. He thinks about D&D at a level most people don't. He understands the culture of the game. He understands the meta of the game. He understands the game. He cares about it. He has respect for it. He has goodwill for it, and he's ahead of me. Flat out, just he's like he just has a better. I don't think he, of course, I have this unique view of Dungeons and Dragons that I wish he shared, but the reality is, I think he has great respect for the game, for Dungeons and Dragons and the thing. He doesn't fully understand it, but I do think that when it comes to a full view of D&D commentator, I think he's a better D&D commentator than me. Period. End of sentence. Right? And I consider him a D&D sage. I think there's few people on the planet. So get this, he just rolled up with a question on his Twitter, and he said, and he was responding to another person, right? And so here was his Twitter. So one other person on Twitter says, hey, should white people play people of color in tabletop role-playing games, right? And rather than answer the question, Tejas Abadia said, I don't know the answer to this. I want you guys to tell me what you think on Twitter, and I'm forming my opinion and I'm forming my answer. Very, very wise, right? Like, yeah, that's a great idea, right? Like, and you're like, well, wait, Scott, why wouldn't, and he even said in his post, why is this complicated? Like the old idea is, yes, we want white people to experience what it's like to be a person of color. That seems really obvious, right? It seems like it's an obvious question, but increasingly there's so much complexity in our world that people are saying, hey, common sense is not so common anymore, right? And we need to think about this carefully. And so one of the things that people are saying is, okay, so if white people feel like they're invited to play people of color, but then they show up at the table and they're doing accents and they're making light of other people's culture, and they're and their play actually turns out like with all their intent was to learn, but their play actually is outrageously disrespectful and is giving other people a worse experience at the table and is spreading ignorance and intolerance, then maybe the answer is no, right? And if the 51% of that is at what's happening at the tables right now is no, then the answer probably should be no. White people should stop playing people of color in tabletop role-playing games, right? Good question, right? Now, I ain't going to touch that question today, and the reason why is if Teos Abadia don't know the answer, I sure as heck don't know the answer yet, right? And I think I will, if I feel bold one day, I will give you my answer on that question after I've heard Teos's, right? Because, if that guy has to think on it, I definitely need to think on it. But there is one thing that I can answer the question today, right? Should nuns play clerics? And here's the answer. No, they should not. Here's why. At the 51% level, considering everything I've seen, I have played with multiple groups. I have watched dozens of different live plays, and I've read a lot of blogs that talk about people playing clerics and nuns specifically playing clerics, and I definitely think it's disrespectful at the 51% level. So who should feel that they are permissioned by the D&D community, in my humble opinion, to play a cleric? Anyone who's devout, right? Because clerics are devout. Clerics are devout, right? And if you become non-devout, you lose your powers as a cleric. That's the way it works, okay? So one, clerics are devout. So anyone who is a person of faith and is devout should play a cleric, should feel permissioned, in my humble opinion, by the D&D community, should feel permission to play a cleric. And I don't like this part, but I'm going to say it because it's logical and it's fair, right? That means if you're an evangelical Christian, get your cleric, right? If you are a Catholic, all right, and you showing up for Mass, get your cleric, right? If you are a Muslim, all right, and you are devout, get your class, get your cleric, right? I don't like this one, but if you're going to be logical, right, and if you reading the rules, if you a Satanist and you worship Satan and not one of these lame, I follow Satan ironically, no. Real Satanists, they definitely exist, right? And if you're a devout Satanist, get your cleric, right? Okay? But if you a nun, stay off. Here's why, okay? One, what I have seen, right, by and large, this is all my humble opinion, all right? And I invite your humble opinion, right, as in a response to mine. But what I've seen is it is highly disrespectful from the nuns. I have actually never seen a nun roll up and do anything but the following. They roll up and they're like, I'm a heal bot for these player characters. They never try to convert people in the city to their god, to their deity, right? And I have never seen them uninvited, right, or unrequested or unquested, right, heal anybody but the player characters, right? And so they are looking at it from a mechanical perspective, and that is incredibly disrespectful to those of us who are devout, right? So in my humble opinion, in Dungeons and Dragons games, if you're a nun, stay off the cleric role, because the reality is 9 chances out of 10 you're going to disrespect devout people who actually understand what clerics are about. And that's my humble opinion, right? I'm willing to hear yours. Do you think I'm right here? If you think I'm right, I'd love to hear that. If you think I'm wrong, why am I wrong, right? If we as a D&D culture community are concerned with being disrespectful at the macro level, at the 51% level, and we as a D&D community are permissioning people to play these roles, which I think we are, right? That's what the Teos Abadia Twitter question was about, right? And it's getting the thought it needs. But I've been saved when I was 15 years old. I feel completely, and I've seen a lot of nuns play clerics, right? So this is my opinion. If you think there's actually a reason that it is not disrespectful for nuns to play clerics the way I just said, I'd love to hear it. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.